Welcome to the News9 Plus Show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital has become symbolic of Israel's war and the rhetoric around it. Palestinians say the fighting around Al-Shifa is proof of Israel not caring for civilian life, while Israel points to the hospital as an example of how Hamas uses civilians as human shields. Joining me to talk about this very unique aspect of this conflict in Gaza is Col DPK Pillay of the Manohar Parrikar IDSA. Col Pillay, welcome back to the News9 Plus Show.
Thank you very much.
Col Pillay is a combat veteran of the Indian Army, a defense analyst, and of course he served in the Middle East with the Red Cross. Col Pillay, describe for us what you're seeing right now, this conundrum, Hamas versus the Israeli military and Al-Shifa hospital, which has become a kind of a human shield that Hamas is using.
If you look at the scale of the attacks on October 7th, it was designed to shock anyone, and it would have provoked any country, any people into an attack. And that's exactly what the Hamas wanted them to do. And now the reports coming in that the Hamas and the visuals that the Israeli Defense Forces have released clearly indicate that these were centers that were used as command posts for the Hamas military. There are some videos incoming, and very clearly knowing the nature of Hamas, knowing the manner in which they've not really adhered to certain customary laws about how women and children and aged people cannot be really targeted,
right.
The scale and brutality of the attack, it's quite possible that they have actually used these hospitals, whether like there'll be many who will deny that these things are non-existent, but it's certain that they have been used, and you've seen visuals coming of an underground network of tunnels that are there, and command posts that are there,
weapons that have been found, arms caches that have been found. What is the law, what does the international law governing armed conflict say about hospitals being used by state actors, non-state actors?
See, the Geneva Conventions came into being after the Battle of Solferino in 1859, when Henry Dunant saw the scale of suffering in Austria. And since 1863, when the first Geneva Conventions were there, people who are no longer taking part in hostilities and hospitals are protected areas. That's the Red Cross symbol that has come in, which later went on to include the Red Crescent and the diamond, red diamond, which are protected areas. Now these areas are
there are no-go zones for the military.
There are no-go zones. You cannot. There are certain categories of people. There are healthcare workers, the doctors, the medics, and ambulances, and others which cannot be attacked under any circumstances. But now this protection that is afforded under the Geneva Conventions, like 1864, or the SAR also had there's the Hague Convention of 1899 and 1907, which also protects these things, and it is there and repeatedly across. What we need to understand is that the protective character of these institutions or these protected areas cease to be protected when they are used for military activities. So now when using these protective sites as basis for military operations, it loses the character. Then it becomes a legitimate military target for the opposing force. Now there are also certain rules under which these targets can be actually these protected areas. Means the opposing attacking force has to inform the people in advance, so that even if there are humans, categories of wounded people, patients, they have sufficient time to actually evacuate themselves and everything. Now apparently, we've heard that they dropped pamphlets and they've announced it on radio that these are going to be attacked. But like, you've seen this, terror groups tend to use it. If you recall back home in our own, the war with LTT, LTT had used the human shields in the last stages of the war. When they didn't allow the fleeing civilians to evacuate themselves from that areas when they were being...
They were hiding amongst the civilians.
Yeah, so they use these human shields. Now, why do they use human shields? Is because they would like to... Now, the world is outraged by attacks against civilians and everything. So they want to use this outrage to their advantage to call for a ceasefire. So that their operations can be consolidated, because they have been relentless in their operations so far.
40 days
it's been relentless, and in fact they have actually leveled up all but whatever they had to do, and they still have not got any signs of the hostages that they are looking for and hunting for. And they're definitely looking at eliminating the entire Hamas leadership that masterminded this dastardly attack
Right.
against them. So the hospitals lose their protected character.
Yeah.
Ambulances lose their character and it's known that people, it's not just here, even in Afghanistan or in
Right.
Syria, people
Right.
have used ambulances to evacuate themselves.
Yeah.
So they
You
become
mean the terrorists, the
Yeah.
non-state actors have used
They have,
ambulances?
you've seen they've been clear, you have, thanks to the presence of drones and,
Right.
aerial surveillance, today you're capable to track those people. So that's when they lose their, it becomes a legitimate target.
Right. And this is that true of non-state actors across the world? Because you've studied geopolitics very closely. You look at armed conflict. Where are other instances of hospitals, ambulances being used on such a large scale?
There's no other group that has used it in such a large scale.
You mean Hamas is?
Yeah, Hamas is
has
master.
pioneered
Of course,
it.
there have been drug lords in Colombia and other places
Right.
who have been using the cover of funeral cottages and they have to export their drugs and others.
Right.
But not in this in the military parlance. I think this is like a real.
So and you have a very unique position, Colonel Pillay. You've been a military man yourself. You've conducted counterinsurgency operations. You've been wounded in one such operation. How does a legitimate military that's confronted with this kind of a dilemma of a non-state actor operating under a hospital among patients, how do you deal with this? How do you play by the rules in such a situation?
See, we are state actors, like you said, and our country has signed the international the conventions, the Geneva Conventions. We are signatories to the humanitarian law. We are also signatories to the human rights law. And there are certain standards that our country promises, even if they don't. There are customary laws. There are some traditional things, like, you read about the Mahabharata, where they talk about Abhimanyu being attacked by people when he was disarmed. So a weaponless person also cannot be attacked.
Yes,
in the
that's
sense
there in the convention.
Yeah. So it's there. Ashwatthama is supposed to have,
right.
Is supposed to be languishing because he killed children in their sleep.
Right.
So, and then against attack, if you remember, Bhishma refused to attack Shikandi because he was born a woman.
That's right.
So
that's a very interesting parallel you make with the Mahabharata, that the rules of ethical conduct are there, constantly drilled in, and all the characters who don't, like you just mentioned the case of Ashwatthama, meet horrible ends because of violating these laws of combat. But what can India learn from this very unique situation that we are witnessing? Could it be possible that we could see a scenario like this developing at some point?
We've been surprised in Bombay. We're going to be celebrating the anniversary now very soon, 26/11. And we've been surprised, and despite all our intel reports that told us that there is going to be a likelihood. So I think one of the foremost things that we must learn is never to rely too much on technology, what the Israelis had done, where they, to rely too much on the Iron Dome and the Iron Curtain, and then the thing like that, that they relied, and it was so easy for like low cost disablement of those high tech equipment and reliance. So you can really not substitute the man on the ground, and even here in our country we're going through this phase where, like we're removing the animal transport now. We're imagining that they're going to be delivered by drones, and you cannot really substitute that. You
have to have a human in the loop.
There has to be a human, and there has to be like look at this devastation that you see. And do you think that suppose there's a blackout, or you really cannot rely on technology too much? We've always been, while I agree that technology always overwhelms, but ultimately, the arrival of gunpowder changed the battlefield, but the thing is, too much of reliance on them also has a setback, and that is what we've. And these non-state actors, like we tend to evaluate people on our standards, that we have evaluated. But you must understand, the enemy doesn't really share the values that you share. So I think the lesson that we should be always be prepared. And the rules are not going to be the same. So you want to play hockey with hockey sticks, they want to play with clubs. So whether it's your enemy, I think you should be prepared for the worst possible scenario. And I think that's something that, eternal vigilance is the price
of liberty
that you have to pay.
And in fact, even as we speak, the Israeli forces are hunting the most wanted man in the Gaza Strip today is Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, and the Israelis are hunting for him. We have the story on the hunt for Yahya Sinwar. Do take a look.
It looks like Israel is very much trying to stick to its word of destroying Hamas. Now, the implications of that are quite worrying, of course. The only way to do that, as we have seen, is by undertaking a very significant set continuation of military operations, which have the ability to undercut and to destroy key elements, we have to assume, of Hamas's military capabilities. But the only way Israel can do that is by operating in highly civilian areas. And this is, of course, where Hamas has emerged, where Hamas has deliberately placed so much of its military infrastructure.
61-year-old Yahya Sinwar is one of the founding members of Hamas. He was secretly elected the chief within the Gaza Strip in 2017. In the 1980s, Sinwar founded Majd, the internal security organization of Hamas. Sinwar spent 2 decades in Israeli prisons. He is fluent in Hebrew and has studied Israeli political culture. As Israeli campaign to destroy Hamas escalates, a hunt for Yahya Sinwar also appears to be on.
I was thinking about this 2011 prisoners exchange a lot in these days, because immediately when news came that they wanted to take hostages to Gaza in order to exchange with the prisoners in the Israeli jails, I understood that what has happened in 2011 was really pivotal to what is happening now. He became also formally the leader of the political wing inside Gaza.
Yahya Sinwar, who is the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, certainly one of the masterminds of this terror attack on October 7th, and has been one of the hardline voices in pushing for war between Hamas and between Israel, is reportedly trapped in the tunnels. He has not been seen. He's not able to communicate with his fighters on the ground. If anyone is familiar with how militaries or guerrilla groups or militant groups work, or any kind of organization, once you lose contact with your commander, chaos ensues, morale decreases greatly. And so this is having an effect on the entire Hamas apparatus, which is under a tremendous amount of pressure.
Because, I mean, Hamas is not an entirely contiguous organization. There is military leadership in Doha. There are political and military leaders in Gaza itself. And it is not clear where this operation kind of came from, to be honest. I would suspect that it was not driven by the political leadership that has been engaging internationally, based in Doha for a long time. But indeed, as you say, Sinwar may be in Gaza. Mohammed al-Deif is a name that has come up quite a lot. These more, well, particularly al-Deif, these more military-orientated commanders. So this was not some big discussion among Hamas, as it were, the leadership. No one in Hamas could have predicted how it would go. So they aspired, I'm sure, to break through the fence, to break into Israel proper, as it were.
Right from the beginning, Israel had said that we are going to go after the leadership. We are going to crush the head, means all the leaders and their commanders, they're going to get them. Now, Yahya Sinwar has been trapped in one of the tunnel systems which has been surrounded by the Israelis. Either he comes out, or he surrenders, or they kill him. So, you can assume that that is the end of Sinwar. He is out of communication. He cannot communicate with anybody now. His leadership is gone.
Col Pillay, how do you think Yahya Sinwar's capture could alter the ground situation in the Gaza Strip? He's a very influential one. He controls all Hamas fighters. Do you think if he's captured, that could result in, say, negotiations for the hostages?
I don't know. You know, one of the reasons that they've taken this many hostages is they want a disproportionate return of their hostages.
Right,
and Israel has a very clear policy of no negotiations. And I think that's a very clear policy. Where
In fact, there's that 1:1,000 ratio
Yeah,
that
so
Yahya Sinwar was one of the 1,000
Yeah.
Palestinians released for that one IDF soldier. So
And
there
we've
could
done
be
that.
a swap.
We made the mistake in the IC-814 where we released
Yes,
people who
of
later
course.
on went on to do. So we should have a very clear
Yes.
no negotiation policy, because the cost that you're paying subsequently is much
Right.
higher.
Right.
You know, you look at the devastation that's been caused here.
Yeah.
Now, what would have been, so frankly, and look at the lifestyle that these people lead. You know, and even in the Jordanian Amman, where I was there, the Palestinians were very well-to-do.
Right.
You know, the ones who live there, away
Yeah.
from Gaza and West Bank, they live affluent lifestyles.
Right.
And Sinwar and his friends who are there controlling Hamas, which
Yeah.
claim to represent the people of Palestine,
Yeah.
they really don't represent, because they really value the people of Palestine. They wouldn't be putting them through this kind of a thing.
Right.
I think the first and foremost is you cannot fight a war, because a war, you must leave scope for negotiation.
Yeah.
And if the brutality is like there's no civilization, there's no race that will accept
Yeah.
this kind of a brutality. When
But
the cost.
what about the hostages, Col Pillay? Now,
Surprising.
what's next?
Yeah, they expected them to be under some tunnels,
Under
but I
the
think
hospital.
they were actually distributed them all over the area. Or probably they have moved them away to
Right.
some places.
So there are
where-
200 plus 220 hostages that are unaccounted for. Do you believe that they're all distributed in
Penny
small
packets,
penny
yeah.
packets all
Yeah.
over
Yeah,
Gaza?
obviously, because they wouldn't have kept them there, and it's a sad thing that they are holding, women, children, and that's something that is not acceptable.
Yes.
War has to be fought between combatants,
Right.
and very clearly combatants have to be recognizable. You may be a non-state actor, but
Yeah.
or you may be there's a non-international armed conflict,
Right.
where the armed combatants are supposed to be like they get the protection under the Geneva Conventions if you are very
Yeah.
clearly combatants.
Yes.
So you can't claim to be a civilian at the same time while wielding a weapon.
Right.
So I think that you're deemed to be a combatant when you're actually using weapons and ammunition. So by holding hostages and
Yeah.
not treating them under, it's not allowed.
Right.
Civilians cannot be held. Human shields cannot be held. These are not rules of warfare.
So it's interesting what you're saying here is that what we are seeing in this war is literally every rule of conflict is being thrown aside, whether it's a kind of brutality on civilians, the fact that hospitals have been used to store hostages, and as Colonel here is showing us that they're being used to store weapons. How does this make this resolution of the Israel-Palestinian issue, how does it complicate that resolution? This kind of brutality, this level of violence?
I don't know whether you've heard about the David versus Goliath fight.
Yeah.
So even before the Philistines became Muslim, they really had a problem with the Israelites.
Right.
And, the fight that took place between David and Goliath, and the fight, he said, God is on our side. And so that apart, the very fact that once the Israeli state was created in 1948, after the British mandate ended, the entire Arab world coalesced for an attack on them. And
Right.
that's the 1948 war. The United Nations TSO,
Yeah.
Truth Supervision Organization, was there, and the people were killed in those
Yes.
things. Of course, it has never found peace. It's like biblical times, it has not found peace, whether it's David
It's
versus
a
Goliath.
perennial
It's
zone
a
of
perennial zone.
conflict, and-
So I don't think even the Oslo I or the Oslo II or the accords that are there,
Yeah.
where land for peace was the deal that is there, the Camp David Accords, or whether, I don't foresee an era where peace reigns in that
Right.
region.
Right.
Even if, there's a state called Iran that does not recognize the existence of Israel.
Right.
And the Hamas award agenda is to eliminate the state of Israel.
To eliminate
Now, how
Israel,
can you
yeah.
actually negotiate when
Yeah.
you are a legitimate prey? Can you coexist if there's an animal in a room which is
Right.
trying to eat a deer,
Yeah.
and, or whatever? Like, I'm just giving an hyper. I'm not saying that anyone is a lion or a deer or whatever, but if there's no way that they could be put in the same enclosure, right?
Right.
So now the only way that you can actually find a peace to this is through an enforcement of peace, in which a larger force is present and capable of enforcing the truth. Because otherwise, on their own accord,
Yeah.
I don't think the states there. You've seen the Egyptian accord that
Yes,
was there, the
yes.
Camp David, and then of course later on, Jordan made peace with them, and Saudi Arabia was inching towards a deal, and you had the Abraham Accords. But all this has been, put into it because there is something about rallying for a cause of these people. But now, if you look at the Palestinians now, other than Israel, where they were there, Jordan was another place that they were given large amount of, when the West Bank was taken, they were given citizenship in that area. But they had the Black September revolt. One of the kings the king of Jordan was assassinated by a Palestinian, a tailor. And later on in 70, there was our neighboring state, Pakistan, General Zia-ul-Haq oversaw the massacre of a large number of them, and they were evicted from there. And they made.
But Col Pillay, on the ground today, you have a very substantial Israeli military presence. The Americans have said, President Biden, no less, has said that they should withdraw, and he doesn't see a military occupation of Gaza as being feasible, and he's emphasized the two-state solution, which is again something the government of India has been strongly pushing for. Do you see, what do you see next here? Do you think the Israeli military is going to withdraw from the Gaza Strip, or they're going to stay put, or will there be another force that will come in?
When they withdrew from Gaza in the initial phases, they were very unpopular. They pulled out a large number of Jewish settlers from that area.
Yes, 2006.
Yeah, and they pulled out, and then the rocket attack started. Now, if you see that they had given an enclave, and if there was peace on the mind of the party that was there, they wouldn't have probably embarked on this kind of a course. Hamas has been elected, and they are supposed to represent the people of this thing. Of course, there will be no election thereafter. But the fact is that there is no peace possible. Let's be very practical, and I don't foresee a peace that between the two on their own accord that they will say, okay, let's sit down, they eliminate
no peace possible between the Palestinians and Israel?
Not between the Palestinians, between the Hamas and Palestinians. Many of them now, and privately have admitted to me that personally they don't have. And I worked in Jordan with many of them personally said that they don't seem to have any problem with them. But it's the leadership that benefits, and the ones who are benefiting from this and living billionaire lifestyles are the ones who are living in Qatar and other places. So there is a profit to be made. There is a conflict economy that runs here, and then people are profiting from it, profiting from the suffering of the Palestinian people. So obviously they don't represent the Palestinian people who are suffering. And I think one of the foremost things is that we need to understand is that we must cease the suffering of the Palestinian people. We need to put but it's just impossible in that kind of a scenario where there are too many players. You see what's happening in Yemen. You have the Houthis and the Hadi regime.
The Houthis are a very interesting phenomenon, Col Pillay. In fact, we just did this explainer on how the Houthis managed to amass so many combat drones. And there's a literal war that's on in the Red Sea even as we speak. There's Houthis firing drones at US warships. They've even managed to shoot one MQ-9 down. Let's take a look. There's a drone war on in the Red Sea. On the 16th of November, a US warship shot down a Houthi drone in the Red Sea. Earlier, on the 19th of October, the Houthis fired another drone towards a US warship in the Red Sea. These two were intercepted. On the 8th of November, the Houthis shot down an advanced US MQ-9B drone near Yemen. But who are the Houthis, and where did they get these missiles and drones from? Well, the Houthis are a Shia Islamist group from the mountainous regions of northern Yemen. They're also known as Ansar Allah, or the followers of God. Since 2014, they've controlled large parts of northern Yemen and are now the de facto ruling government in those parts. But like the Taliban in Afghanistan, the Houthis are not recognized internationally. In fact, the United States and the UN have designated them a global terrorist organization. The Houthis are one of an arc of Iran-supported non-state actors who've been attacking Israel and the United States since October. Like Hezbollah, the Houthis are the world's only non-state actors with cruise and ballistic missiles. They have one more ace in their arsenal, a fleet of attack drones. In 2019, the Houthis launched a cruise, missile and drone strike against Saudi Arabia's largest oil refiner, Aramco. This attack hit refining facilities in Saudi Arabia and caused millions of dollars worth of damage. This was the world's first such mass attack by a non-state actor. Since then, the Houthis have launched attacks across the Arabian Peninsula. In January 2022, they launched ballistic missiles and drones to attack Abu Dhabi International Airport, some 1,800 kilometers away. But where are the Houthis getting their weapons from? The answer? Iran. Iran has built up an extensive drone fleet over the past decade. Last year, Iran in fact even supplied drones to Russia to be used in Ukraine. And for a decade now, Iran has been accused of supplying the Houthis with advanced weapons, including these cruise ballistic missiles and drones that they've been using in combat. Tehran has denied all these charges. These weapons, but, are often sent by sea and in many cases being intercepted by United States forces, coalition forces in the Arabian Sea. And these interceptions are interesting because they've revealed previously unknown weapon systems like this 358 loitering surface-to-air missile made by Iran. Now the 358 is a ground-to-air missile that's launched and then does loops looking for its target. It's a capability that few countries are known to have possessed. But among the primary drones in the Houthi arsenal are the Samad family of armed drones. The largest of these, the Samad 3, has a wingspan of 4.5 meters and they're nearly 3 meters long. They have a range of 1,600 kilometers and carry 40 kilos of explosives. They have a very distinctive V-shaped tail, which makes it very easy to identify. And these are the drones. This family of Samad drones allow the Houthis to bring very large parts of the Saudi Arabian peninsula under their attack range. And that's what makes the Houthis a formidable force in the Arabian Peninsula. So that's the Iranian hand there. You can see that in the Houthi movement. They've created this arc of instability, non-state actors ringing Israel. How do you see the role of Iran in all of this?
Iran is the one who's gained from it all, in the sense, with all credit to their, if you see, the world has changed in 1979 in many ways. Once the Ayatollah took over the thing, and of course the invasion of Afghanistan, which created a new breed of the fighters, Mujahideen.
1979, the
1979.
Most significant year probably of the post-Second World War.
Since then, Iran has been on the fringes in many ways. They were a Shia country. And today, if you see, when you go, the Popular Mobilization Front that actually took on the ISIS, a Sunni group, and the way they actually mobilized them. And they've created a thing from the Red Sea to Lebanon.
Yes.
Today they dominate, they call, and look at the, and look at the technology. Like you're talking about the Houthis technology. Who gets them? Houthis are a ragtag lot.
There are militia, there are mountain-based militia
but they're trained and they're equipped by these people, and they're capable of actually, So if you think, if there's anyone who's benefited from the whole instability thing, it's Iran that has actually, emerged as there's a constant fight between Saudi Arabia and
it's the battle for the leadership of the Muslim world. And
so Iran remains, and it's also very different from, culturally. They're not Arab.
Yes.
They are inheritors of an ancient, Shah of Iran had that 2,000 years of, just before he collapsed in 74 or something, he had the, the grand thing. They identify with those grand warriors, the ones who took on Alexander, Xerxes, and so they identify with those kind of a thing. So they're a different race of people. They're culturally different. They are, but the sad part is our world is so divided that we are not able to, there's a lot of lesson in the way we Indians accommodate each other. You look at the multiculturalism that we have, and the way we have been able to absorb and assimilate people. That kind of a thing doesn't exist in the Middle East for whatever reason. They don't have that ability to assimilate.
The divisions are far more
acceptance of each other. That's something which is very, it's a very either all or none. It's like there is no compromise that you give and take. That kind of a thing doesn't exist.
In fact, that's the kind of rhetoric that we are also seeing post October 7, the violence, and where both sides have been literally invoking the Bible to call for the extermination of the other. And this is the kind of angry rhetoric that we haven't seen in many years, and we actually thought the Middle East was going to be a very peaceful place, but sadly that's not the case, at least in the near future. But last thoughts, Colonel Pillay, do you see, after the violence, do you see a Hamas 2.0, an even more deadlier version of Hamas emerging from the rubble, or do you see peace?
There can be two outcomes to this. That one is that you create a new, more revenge-seeking generation.
Like ISIS replaced Al-Qaeda. After Al-Qaeda, you had ISIS.
But then with the extermination of ISIS, or with the extermination of LTT, Prabhakaran and the leadership eliminated, you had the problem sorted, and
Right.
so I really think I really, because there's no limit to the amount of effort that people have put in.
Right.
The Americans have been trying, the Oslo Accords have been there, and they have been, but there's no, I don't know what is the path that they can actually take to find a reconciliation, to
Right.
each other's acceptance of each other, and it's been since biblical times. It has been there, and I think the earlier they accept the existence, because for them it's a tiny sliver of land. If you look
Right.
at the 14 million Jews that are there, and 1,400 people being killed, it's like 1.5 lakh people being killed in India. India has that ability. A lot of people said that India showed great patience when Bombay happened. And
26/11.
But if you look at it, like if you see the numbers that were killed, and we had that ability to have, we have the depth, we have the numbers of people. They don't have the same kind of a thing. So Israel had to do that kind of a thing, because you remember when you had those
certain threshold had been crossed,
and even
numerical threshold had been crossed.
There is a threshold. Even there are hardliners. The one who assassinated Rabin was that he conceded too much to the PLO in recognizing them, and that's the reason why he had to go. So that hardliners are there on each side, either side. Now, how do you resolve that? That calls for a real statesman, which the world is lacking today. That statesman who can actually get people to the negotiating table and get them to talk, and that kind of a statesman today, we probably saw them post World War, because the world went through a lot of suffering collectively, and then they were willing to talk and negotiate, and people were capable, and that's how the Europeans were reconstructed. Japan was reconstructed. You had a thing, but that kind of leadership today is absent in most countries.
That's an interesting point you made. The leadership that's missing, that could actually command a kind of moral respect to call a halt to violence and war. And increasingly we're looking at an unstable world in terms of the number of conflicts that have broken out and the struggle for power. But Col Pillay, thank you so much for your thoughts. It's always great having you over, and we can only hope for peace to return.
Let's pray for peace.
Let's pray for peace. Exactly. From Israel, we move to India's heartland, where a battle is on between the Congress and the BJP for controlling some of India's largest states. And Congress leader Priyanka Gandhi targeted Jyotiraditya Scindia, now a BJP leader, at a rally recently. She called him a traitor. Scindia belongs to a family that's been in power for over 2 centuries. Take a look at our story.
Jyotiraditya Scindia is also facing a litmus test.
There have been corruption charges against all the chief ministers or towering leaders who were rich, but this is not the case with Scindia. So the point is that in modern times, when the society is looking up to good leaders, so Jyotiraditya Scindia could be one of them.
As far as Jyotiraditya Scindia is concerned, even if the BJP loses, Jyotiraditya Scindia will be around for at least another 2 decades. He is young and he has the ability to come back.
Jyotiraditya Scindia comes from an influential political dynasty in Madhya Pradesh. He quit the Congress and joined the BJP in 2020 to realize his ambition of leading his home state. He has got that opportunity 3 years later. The assembly election is a make or break moment for India's most discussed royal family member.
The Scindias are the longest beneficiaries of being in power. 1731, Ranoji Maharaj becomes a kind of political entity in the eyes of Peshwa, and since then they have been a ruling so to say ruling class in the monarchy. So there has not been a day when a Scindia has not been in the Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha or in the State Assembly of either Madhya Pradesh or Rajasthan. So can you imagine, there is no parallel in the world that from 1731 till 2023 the Scindias have been in power constantly in the monarchical form and in democratic form.
They have been one of the biggest royal families. Under the British also they had their own influence. Whether it was Rajmata Scindia, whether it was Madhavrao Scindia, whether his son Jyotiraditya Scindia, as we all know, Madhavrao Scindia died in an airplane crash, very unfortunate death in 2001. He was suddenly thrown into politics after his father's tragic death, but he continues to be a newsmaker. Jivajirao Scindia's wife, Rajmata Vijayaraje Scindia, she was not in politics, but after her husband's death in Mumbai, she had to perforce join politics. She had 4 daughters and one son. One son was Madhavrao Scindia, who was a prominent Congress leader. 2 of her daughters, Vijayaraje's daughters, one is Vasundhara, the other one is Yashodhara. Yashodhara was also a late entrant into politics. She was away in US. After that, when she came back and joined politics in Madhya Pradesh, she became the Minister for Industries, Minister for Sports and Youth Welfare, etc. And now she is quitting politics. And Jyotiraditya is the only son of Madhavrao Scindia. Madhavrao Scindia has had a daughter and a son. The daughter is married in Jammu Kashmir royal family. She is daughter-in-law of Karan Singh ji.
Madhavrao Scindia's personality was different. He had that Prime Minister material, and everybody expected. Plus, his appeal was transnational. He had following in south, north, east, west. Whereas Jyotiraditya Scindia's influence is confined to his Chambal, Gwalior region. And Madhavrao Scindia was a very different man.
Madhavrao Scindia had all the wealth to support him. He could have also managed and maneuvered things to win a chief ministership post, but he did not do that. And the same thing applies to Jyotiraditya also.
कांग्रेस में किस्सा कुर्सी का, भारतीय जनता पार्टी में किस्सा जनता के हाथों में एक नया ऊर्जा लाने का और विकास और प्रगति लाने का निर्णय।
A lot of people in media and a lot of political observers also feel that if he had been treated well, he would not have gone to BJP. But then when having gone to BJP, he has tried to adjust to BJP the way BJP workers or leaders act. And he is, I think, he has won the confidence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
I think the Scindias in heart of hearts, they like to, fancy themselves as some, royals or ex-royals, some sort of elite. Actually, they have an unfinished agenda. That during the great, Maratha powers and all, they could have, the Marathas could never rule over Delhi as per strategy, design or failure. So now they want to fulfill, so they always remain the vice regent, number 2. So they want to regain that.
Jyotiraditya Scindia is a modern day Maharaja. He has adopted a modern lifestyle along with sticking to his cultural roots. The balancing act reflects in his politics too. He is eyeing a central position in the BJP at the national level. At the same time, his heart lies in his home state, Madhya Pradesh. It will be interesting to watch if he follows Shivraj Singh Chauhan's path from Delhi to Bhopal.
Jyotiraditya Scindia is as impervious and as Maharaja as Vasundhara Raje loves to be called Maharani. Jyotiraditya Scindia loves to be called Shrimant, Maharaj.
एक एक मत कमल के फूल के निशान पर डलना चाहिए, डालोगे?
Now that he is in BJP, so he has to shade that feudalistic character and come to terms with the BJP's ideology. So now he prefers to be called Bhai Sahab, and he tries to mingle with his Praja. Biggest example of this royal family losing its attraction is the way people in Guna constituency defeated Jyotiraditya Scindia. It's the first time that Scindia leader, any leader from Scindia family lost so badly. Though Vasundhara Raje had also contested from Bhind in 1984 and she had lost, but that was a different political scenario.
Jyotiraditya Scindia is also facing a litmus test. Unlike Vasundhara, it's not a it's not sunset for him, but it is also a very challenging time because last time around in 2018, the Congress won 26 out of 34 seats from Gwalior Chambal region, and Mr. Scindia took a credit that he was the architect of victory of 26 seats. So Jyotiraditya Scindia, age is on his side, looks are on his side, so he will continue as a central minister, but his stature in the state politics will get diminished if the BJP wins or if the BJP loses, both ways.
Earlier, see, when till Shivraj Singh Chauhan was projected as chief minister, there was at least in public perception as well as in the BJP cadre, there was a view that there are only two chief ministerial candidates in the race, Jyotiraditya Scindia and Shivraj Singh Chauhan, and because Scindia had emerged as a parallel power center. Now that the BJP has taken a very surprising decision and fielded 3 union ministers, if not in this term, maybe in the next term, maybe 10 years hence, he can become chief minister, because politics is after all a game of probability.
The BJP cadre in Madhya Pradesh will accept Jyotiraditya Scindia as their leader if he manages a great victory for the party in his backyard, the Gwalior Chambal region. The BJP is looking for a generational shift. It is in the mood for political experiments. If Scindia takes everyone along, he will have a bright future.
You see, to become a chief minister, you need to be very comfortable with the state. If you have a very active social life in Delhi, Mumbai, or any of these metropolitans, if you look at politics as your hobby, then it is very difficult to become a chief minister. In India, the maturity, political maturity or political stature comes when you're 60 plus. So in the 60 plus age, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia, with his vision, with his youthful look, with his bilingual approach, and with his experience, he would become a somewhat contender with the blessings of course, the RSS, if you talk about cricket language, or the 12th man. So he is the 12th man of BJP today. So he'll get in team and then he'll move up.
वोट कमल के फूल के निशान का नहीं छूटना चाहिए.
From political royalty, we move on to India's middle class. Their taxes pay for free food, LPG cylinders, and affordable housing that the government gives the poor. But why is India's middle class so politically insignificant? Our story, The Political Orphan, has some answers. Thanks for watching.
I think we are at the cusp of public policy shift.
Consumption is roughly around 56% of our GDP.
I don't view it as a curse even one bit.
I'm bullish about the middle class.
The Indian middle class continues to be a political orphan in this country, even as we move into the election year 2024. The free ration scheme has been extended by another 5 years to 81 crore families. LPG cylinders that are free and subsidized continue. Affordable housing that is subsidized weighs in.
देश के 80 करोड़ गरीबों को मुफ्त राशन देने वाली योजना को भाजपा सरकार अब अगले 5 साल के लिए और बढ़ाएगी.
Who's paying for all this? Of course, the tax-paying, hard-working Indian middle class.
I'm bullish about the middle class. Every lower middle class will become middle class. Today, out of 140 crore people, 100 crore people live on $1,000 a year income. 440 crore people live on $6,000 a year. That is $3.4 trillion. Out of the 40 crore people, 10 crore people, 100 million live on $10,000 a year. The balance 30 crore live on $5,000 a year. $10,000 a year like a middle income country. And it's very big and it's growing at 8-9%.
Classic case in point, my parents never borrowed money because borrowing or credit was seen as a sin. My generation kind of borrowed money only to buy a house and quickly repaid everything. The next generation we see are ready to borrow or convert their jeans purchase into 6 EMIs and 12 EMIs. They're ready to go on a foreign trip and pay it over 12 months EMI. So the generational aspects of how society reacts to what are the various norms is very different, which means even public policy for those have to change. And I think that is where the big dichotomy that India is in. I think we are at the cusp of public policy shift of how do I make policies for somebody who is 20 or 30 or 40 years younger, what are their aspirations?